It's Ashwin. How are you? I wanted to introduce you to a long-standing, highly regarded brand coming out of Northampton in the UK. This, my friends, is my first review of the Edward Green brand, and specifically this beautiful pair of Downing shoes. The Downing is a derby or a blucher style shoe. It's a 3-eyelet derby, as you can see. So this pair is built off of Edward Green's 82 last. So the 82 last, and pardon the Bontoni shoe trees, but the 82 last is a almond shaped last. You can see the sort of almond shaped asymmetry to the toe, typically reserved for Edward Green's Oxford and dressier boot models, but they decided to use it on this shoe for this particular model. This is made using a nubuck leather. So nubuck is an interesting leather that we're going to talk more about later in the video. Edward Green sources their leathers primarily out of canneries in Italy and France. You can just see the lining around the top of the shoe here, but really this is a unlined blucher. This makes it a more relevant shoe for summer wear because it's a little less protective of the elements. It's a little bit more comfortable. Unlined shoes, in my experience, are shoes that are a little bit more tolerant to tighter fits because they give a little bit more in the front. So this is made out of a chocolate nubuck leather. So nubuck and suede are often lumped together, but there are actually important differences to nubuck leather. So nubuck is actually made of the outer or top grain leather, the outer membrane or the outer part of the calf skin or any sort of calf hide. Actually, the original nubucks were made from, I believe, deer and elk leather, but majority of leathers now that are branded nubuck are made out of calf leather. And so if you take a calf hide and use the outer part of the leather, which is what you usually would use for a typical dress shoe with the finish on it, that differs from the use of suede leathers, which use the inner part of that leather. So you can look in there, that kind of has a look of suede to it. The nubuck leather is actually the top grain of the leather sanded down. The reason for the sanding is to remove any imperfections on the leather and to kind of even out the look. Well, it's pretty rugged and it's thought to hold up better in time than suede leathers to wear and tear. So also a really good unlined leather to use when you're using a leather that doesn't have a lining to kind of support it. So keep that in mind. And so it's actually more expensive than suede. And so even though it's a leather that's often forgotten in the grand scheme of using leathers for finishing, I think that nubuck leather is underappreciated and could be used more frequently in lieu of suede. The longer oak bark tanning process provides you with a more comfortable and longer lasting sole, lending itself to longer use and less resolings. As I mentioned, the welting process here is Goodyear welted, very high stitch density, probably in the neighborhood of 9 stitches per inch, if I can recall. You can see the very subtle fudge detail right there on the edge there, which is really nicely done. The nice thing about this shoe that I found is that you can actually see how clean the upper stitching is because they're using a contrast stitching against this suede, or sorry, this nubuck, chocolate colored nubuck leather with a off-white or kind of tan stitch. You can really see it's done. They've done a really nice job with spacing, with interval spacing of the stitches. It's just a pretty high stitch density on that. Very, very cleanly done. So those are some of the things you're paying Edward Green prices for. Not as narrow of a waist, not as much of a bevel. It's a fairly flat waist there. You can see that there is not a blind waist. I'm not sure if I can truly show that, but there is actually stitching you can see in the waist. So this does not have a blind waist like you see in many other upper welting constructions, even in Goodyear welted methodology these days. That's become more valued. The heel block is a block heel, which is pretty neatly set against the heel here, although, you know, there is a little step off there. It's not super tapered. Edward Green has been around for many years, since 1890, so that puts him at about 130 plus years of heritage in that brand that was started in Northampton by a gentleman named Edward Green, who was actually a clicker. So clickers, the method of clicking is involving cutting the leather to a specific space and sort of shape to start to craft your shoes. They put about 350 shoes out per year. So about between 10,000 and 15,000 pairs, mainly distributed through their own website as well as through retailers all over the world. Everything is English made. So what makes this a $1,200 shoe? I think part of it comes from the heritage of the name Edward Green, which has been around for 130 years, has lasted the test of time. English shoemakers in general have a price premium that is related to their branding. Further, the quality of materials used, these are top quality hides. You can imagine that Edward Green is not going to cheap out on the quality of the hides they're using. So this nubuck, for example, the top grain leather often has imperfections. So you may imagine that they may purchase hides that have less imperfections, so they have to do less sanding to get this nubuck, which then leads to a more robust leather that will last a longer time. So you're gonna have to pay your labor English prices, which is going to automatically raise the cost of this shoe. Further, you're going to have quality clicking. You want to make sure that the shoe is cut well so the leather is not stressed and strained in ways that make it crease. You want to have quality lasting so that the leather is placed appropriately on the sole so that it's not asymmetrically distributed in terms of tensile strength and forces that go through the shoes. You're going to be using heritage lasts. This is, as I mentioned, using the 82 last. Edward Green has been well regarded for its lasts for many years. Some of the nicest, most elegant lasts coming out of Britain, which has a very specific look to it compared to the Italian makers, the Spanish makers, now the makers out of Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia. Each have a certain aesthetic and style, but Edward Green has a very well regarded set of lasts. And then I would talk a little bit about so what are you getting for the extra money? Say a $300 shoe, which is already very expensive, say a Carlos Santos, a TLB Mallorca, a J. Fitzpatrick level shoe compared to something that's much more expensive like this. Well, there's going to be some subtle differences in fit and finish. These shoes are going to be expected to have very few, if any, errors in terms of the welt properties. You're not going to see any real step offs where the welting ends. Everything's going to come across really, really clean in terms of fit and finish. So you're paying for that. Everybody has a different price point, a different comfort level. If you have infinite amount of money to spend, then sure, go for Edward Green. But if you're on a tighter budget, there are a lot of other great brands to consider that provide you nearly equivalent or equivalent fit and finish. Maybe not the brand name recognition of an Edward Green, maybe not the resale value should you choose to sell these again. All in all, beautiful shoe. Really worth considering if you can find one at a price that's suitable for you.